Alright, this video is going to be about zero and negative exponents. And so I want to kind of reiterate one thing from the YU video that I think they did a really good job of explaining. So we're going to start kind of with our base here, and we're just going to write 2 to the first power, which is just equal to 2. Okay. If I write 2 to the second power, then that's 2 times 2, which is 4. If I write 2 to the third power, that's 2 times 2 times 2, whoops, which is 8. If I write 2 to the fourth power, it's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 16. And so what we see in this column right here, this middle column, is that we're just adding an extra 2 that we're multiplying by every time. And our result over here is just increasing times 2 times 2 times 2. Okay, so every time I add 1 to the exponent, I'm multiplying by 2 going up this column. So if I reverse that pattern and subtract 1 from the exponent, that means that I'm going to go down in this column, and the reverse of that would be dividing by 2. So 2 divided by 2 gives me 1, and as you saw in the YU video, anything to the 0 is just 1. Okay, so if I go up the column over here, increasing the exponent by 1, I'm multiplying by 2, multiply by 2, multiply by 2, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1. Well, if I now go minus 1, that means I have to divide by 2. So if I go minus 1 again, 0 minus 1 is negative 1. And I now have to divide this by 2. I'm going down an exponent, so I divide by 2. So 1 divided by 2 I can write as a fraction like that, or 0.5. Okay? So if I go down again, I continue the pattern, divide by 2, that gives me 1 over 4. Continue the pattern again, divide by 2, that gives me 1 over 8. Okay? And if you compare right here 2 to the third and 2 to the negative 3, 2 to the third is 8, 2 to the negative 3 is 1 over 8. Okay? And that's the pattern when you're dealing with negative exponents. Okay? 2 to the third is 8, 2 to the negative third is 1 over 8. Okay, so whenever you see a negative, it means you're going to flip it to the bottom, in this case, of the fraction. And you create a fraction, you put 1 on top, and you put that 2 to the 3. So this is just the same as 1 over 2 to the 3. Okay, so if I had, instead of a 2, if I had like an x to the 0 would be 1, x to the 1 would be x to the 2 would be x times x, so x to the negative 1 would be 1 over x. And you see it's just kind of, it's almost like it's the opposite right here and right here. And that kind of connects in your brain a little bit because 1 and negative 1 are opposites. So it makes sense that it would be kind of x and 1 over x. Maybe those examples help you to just see it kind of explained like that. Maybe not. But we'll look at a few more examples here. In this one we've got 4r to the fourth times r to the negative fourth. This is a multiplication problem, multiplication right there. So that tells us to, and I'm going to use the rules for these. So this tells me to use the multiplication rule, okay, which would be 4r to the 4 and then plus negative 4. Okay, the multiplication rule says that you add the exponents. So that gives me 4r to the 0, and anything to the 0 is just 1. Now notice that 4 has like no exponent, so that really means a 1. So this is really a 4 to the 1 and an r to the 0. And anything to the 0 is 1, which means that this is 4 to the 1 times 1, which is just 4. Okay? Another way that you can look at this one is using kind of what we just talked about. So this 4r to the fourth stays right here. the r to the negative 4 turns into 1 over r to the positive 4. That's how you get rid of the negative. Move it to the bottom, make it positive. Then if you think about multiplying fractions, you multiply straight across the top, you get 4r to the 4th over r to the 4th. And these two things cancel each other out, leaving you with just 4. Okay. So in this next one, we've got a 3 and then an r to the 0 and then a 3 and an r to the negative 1. So we'll put the 3's together. So we got a 3 and a 3, and then we've got an r to the 0 and an r to the negative 1. R to the 0 is really just 1. Anything to the 0 is just 1. So this is 3 times 1 times r to the negative 1. And I can turn this r to the negative 1 into a 1 over r. And then on the top, that leaves me with 3 times 3 times 1 times 1. And on the bottom, it leaves me with a 1 times r. 3 times 3 times 1 times 1 is just 9. And on the bottom, you've got r. Okay. Next, I'm going to regroup this. So I'm going to put the 3's together and the x's together and the y's together. 3 times 3 is 9. X to the 3 plus 3. And then y to the negative 3 plus 2. So that's x to the 6th. And this is y to the negative 1. Okay. This answer is kind of one step away from being fully simplified. This is a pretty good answer, but we usually want to get rid of the negative exponents. The 9 and the x to the 6, those are fine, so just kind of leave those alone. And then y to the negative 1 turns into a 1 over y to the 1, to the positive 1. Okay, so again you see negative flips down to the bottom of a fraction, 1 goes on top, and then we can combine those two things to make this. Okay. This next one, we got a couple different negatives here, but don't let that overwhelm you. Just kind of start off by regrouping some things. Put the x's together, put the y's together, and then use your rule. So 2, negative 4, this is really a 1, plus 1. And then we got a 3 plus a negative 4. Negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. 3 plus negative 4 is negative 1. And there's a pretty good answer. We can go one step further. Negative exponent means it's going to flip down to the bottom. Negative exponent here means it's going to flip down to the bottom. The 2 is fine. That's just a regular 2, and it doesn't need adjusting. So the x's go down to the bottom, the y's go down to the bottom, the 2 stays up on top, and it's totally fine. Okay, so this would be our most simplified answer. And in terms of proficiency type of things, for what we're doing right now, this would be your full credit for exceeding answer for this type of a problem. Okay. Then we got a few problems with the power property and negatives. So if you remember, the power property says that you multiply exponents and you distribute these. So that's going to give me, really that's a 2 to the 1 there. So that's really going to give me 2 to the 1 times negative 4, and then m to the 3 times negative 4. And that's a 2 to the negative 4, and an m to the negative 12. And then since both of those are negative, they're going to flip down to the bottom. So I'm going to put a 1 on the top, 2 to the 4 on the bottom, 1 on the top, m to the 12 on the bottom. And you can put those together to make 1 over 2 to the 4 m to the 12. And 2 to the 4, we could figure out what that equals. 2 to the 3 is 8, so then multiply it by 2 again would be 16. So that would be 1 over 16 m to the 12. Okay, and again, this would be your exceeding. In the next one here, we've got this whole thing to the 0. And before you go any further, we talked about earlier in this video and in the YU video that anything to the 0 is just 1. And that it doesn't matter what this anything is. It really means like no matter what it is, take it to the 0, you're going to get 1. So this whole thing inside of parentheses is taken to the 0. And even though it says some confusing stuff and there's some different numbers and things in here, the whole thing, because it's in parentheses, is taken to the 0 power, which means that this whole thing is just 1. We could go through all the steps and like do 3 to the 0 and n to the 0 and all that, but everything is just going to be to the 0, which means it's just 1. In number 7, we're going to distribute the 2. So this 3 to the 1 times 2 and n to the 3 times 2. And that gives me 3 to the 2nd and n to the 6th, which is 9 n to the 6th. And there's no negatives here, so we don't have to worry about flipping anything upside down. This is just kind of a normal problem. Number 8 here is just an n to the negative 1. There's nothing else, no other properties that we have to worry about. So this is just a very basic negative problem. And really what this one is just getting at is if you have an n to the negative 1, if you want to make that positive, you got to put it on the bottom of a fraction, make the exponent positive, put a 1 on top. Okay, that's your process. Move it down to the bottom, make it positive, put a 1 on top. And this would be the most simplified answer for that. You don't have to write the 1, I suppose, but okay.